Welcome to Lab 28, Day 18. In this lab, we'll try to demonstrate one-to-many relationships. Now, before I move ahead and I talk about one-to-many relationship, let's first try to understand, under which conditions we will need one-to-many relationship. So let's go back again to a project here. So let's first understand the scenario, and then we will see, how one-to-many relationship fits here. Now, in this customer table here, we have one field here called as hobbies. And if you remember right, on the screen, the hobbies is actually a checkbox. Checkbox means, that one customer can have multiple hobbies. In other words, he is interested in reading and as well as in painting. Okay. And if you see our current database design, it is actually not accommodating that one as to many relationship. In other words, here I can add only one hobby at one time, right? But what happens, if I go and check two check boxes, then there is no way we have done anything over here, by which we can go and accommodate multiple hobbies for one customer. In simple words, we need to go and change this database design in such a way that we should be able to accommodate multiple hobbies for one customer. Or putting it in other words, the relationship between hobbies and customer is one as to many. In other words, one customer can have multiple hobbies. So what we'll do is, let's go ahead and change this database design in such a way that we can accommodate multiple hobbies for one customer. So first thing what I'll do is, let me go and create a very simple hobby master table, and then we will go ahead with the one is to many relationship design here. So let us first go ahead and create a new table here. So the first column we'll have here is a hobby ID, which is a simple auto increment number, and I'll make this as a primary key. In case you are not aware of primary keys, foreign keys, please go ahead and first look at the SQL Server videos and then come back here. Okay. And second, we'll have a hobby description, so like, okay, and this I'll name it as hobby master. Or must we can follow our naming conventions, which we have been following till now. So okay, so we'll make it as hobby master. I thought that our naming conventions are TBL, so this is fine, right? And this number, right, we'll make it as an auto increment here. So I'm going to say that this is identity on, which means it's auto increment number, right? Save this. So let's go ahead and fill some hobbies here. So I'll just go and add some records. So I'll say this is reading, swimming, riding. So some hobbies here. I've just watching movies. At least that's my favorite hobby. Right. So I put some hobbies over here. Now what we need to do is, we need to now go back again to our table here, and we need to make a connection of one as to many between this customer table and between this hobby master table here, right? So what we'll do is, let's go to our customer table here, to our customer table design, and the first thing what I would like to do is, I'd like to get rid of this hobbies from here for now. So I'll go and delete this column from here, and I'm going to go and save this. And the next thing what I would like to do is, I would like to go and create one more table here, which will actually represent customer hobbies, right? So I'll go and create one more table here. So it will have three fields. One field is nothing but a simple auto increment ID, just to represent the primary key. So this is one field I will have here. The second field I will have is the customer ID, for which we are going to go and save these hobbies. And the last one we'll have here is the hobby ID. Okay, so I'll name this as customer hobbies, right? Now the next thing what we need to do is, we need to go and connect this customer with this customer hobbies with a one as to many relationship, right? So I'll just go and close this for now, close this, and let's go ahead and open our database diagram here, right? Okay, and let's go ahead and add that table, that is customer hobbies, right? And also let's add the hobby master here, right? So You can see that how our database design is improving now. So the first thing is, that whatever hobbies, are going to be present in this customer hobbies table, should come from this hobby master. So the first thing is I'm going to go and drag and drop this hobby ID over here, saying that yes, all the hobbies will come from the hobby master. Okay. 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 Save this. And now the next thing is, we need to make a one as to many relationship between this customer and customer hobbies here, right? So first thing, this my ID, which is actually a unique field, if you remember, this my ID was a unique field, right? So the first thing is, in order to create a one as to many relationship, right, we need to ensure that we have one primary key over here. So currently we don't have any field which is a primary key. So what we'll do is we'll go and make this my ID as a primary key, and let's take this opportunity to go and name this as ID, because my ID does not look to be a proper naming convention, right? So I'm going to go and just change this to my ID here. I'm going to save it. So remember that whenever you go back and see your design, and if you find that there are some funny naming conventions which you have put, right, always try to ensure that you go and change them, so that tomorrow when new developers come in, they will understand. For example, you saw that previously we made this column as my ID, but I ensured that this time I have changed this to ID, so that if tomorrow someone sees it, right, he will understand what this ID means. So whenever you go back to your code, right, and if you find that there is something funny, please try to go and change that and make the code better, right? So we have made this ID as a primary key. I'm going to take this and create a one as to many relationship with this customer ID over here, right? Save it. Great. So what do we have now here? Just very quickly for everyone. So we have the customer table, and this customer will have many hobbies, and the hobbies will come from the hobby master, right? So the way this thing will now go is, let's go and see. Let's go and put some records here. So let me just go and execute this. Sorry, now I've renamed the column, so I'll make this as ID. Execute. Yeah, there is no hobbies now, right? So now the way the data will be entered into our customer hobbies is something like this, right? So now let's say that, let's take Aditya. Now Aditya ID is 14. So I can say here, okay, the 14th customer, right, has hobby of watching movies. Now watching movies is 4, right? So 4. And the 14th customer, oh, something wrong there. So this 14th customer has hobby ID of 4, right? Then after that, okay, this does not look to be auto increment field here, right? So let's go ahead and make that hobby. Let's make it as auto increment field. Okay, right. So that we don't have to go and enter this 1 and 2 over here. Okay. So coming back again. So this 14 Aditya, I'm saying that this 14 will have watching movies as a hobby, and second, let's say that this 14 also has hobby of writing. So I'll say here again, 14 also has hobby of writing. Okay, right. In the same way, let's take this guy, test 1 2 3 37. So I can say now here 37 has hobby of reading and swimming, let's say. So reading is 1 and swimming is 2. So I'll say now here 37 is interested in reading, and also he is interested in swimming, right? So now you can see that how we are able to make one as to many relationship between the customer and the hobbies. Now just to check if how this data looks like, let's go and make an inner join here. So now if I go and just make an inner join with the customer and hobby master, just to check how it looks like. So if you now see, execute. So you can now see that how the one as to many relationship has been maintained. So you can see Aditya is now interested in watching movies. Aditya is also interested in writing. Test 1 2 3 is interested in reading, and also test 1 2 3 is interested in swimming. So now by using this foreign key and primary key relationship, we are able to create the one as to many relationship between the customer and the hobbies. So we have successfully changed our database design so that we can accommodate one-to-many relationship between customer and customer hobbies, right? But now this is just the 20% part of the story. We have only changed the back end, but what about the front end? Because now this front end, it has this hobbies column as a text, right? And we have done such big changes over here. So now the next thing is, we need to go and change this front end as well. We need to go and make some changes in the class as well. Probably we need to go and change something in the data access layer as well, right? So what we'll do is, now let's go back again to our Visual Studio project here, and let's start making those changes, which will help us accommodate this new database design change which we have made here. So let's go back to Visual Studio here and let's run the application. Now what we'll do is, we'll go ahead and we'll run the application. We know that the application will crash because we have done so many huge changes at the database side that this application has to crash. And as we see the crashes, we'll try to fix them up, and then we'll try to go and accommodate the new database change in our code here. So for the username and password, we have not really changed anything. In other words, the login table structure we have not changed, right? The only table structure we have changed is the transaction table, that is customer, and we have added some new tables, for the hobbies, right? So here we are not getting any error, so this thing should just go on. So I'm going to just go and put the proper username and password, and I'll say login. Now what should happen is, the crash will happen, only when it goes and hits what you call, your customer table, and you can see that the crash has happened, and you can see the error over here. It is saying that invalid column name hobbies and invalid column names my ID, and that is right. We have removed the hobbies field, and as well as, we have changed this my ID field to ID, right? So let's go ahead and fix this first. So what I'll do is, I'll go and stop this application for now, and I'll go and remove this hobbies field from here, and I'll change this my ID to ID, and let me go again and run the application. So what we'll do is, we'll fix the application issues, we'll run it, we'll fix it, we'll run it. Okay, so there I'm running it again. So there the application is running. So let me again try. I hope that, this time at least I should see our input screen. Pass 123 login. So there it is. So you can see that our input screen is working perfectly well. It is nice, and we are happy about this, right? So at least our application is running. But now, as we said that we have done some database changes, right? So let's list down, what changes we need to do ahead, right? Now the first change what we need to do is, we need to go and remove this hard-coded checkboxes here, because now remember that, in your table you have a table, right? You have already created a table, and the table is your hobby master, right? So what you'd like to now do is, you'd like to go and get data from this hobby master, and depending on the data of the hobby master, so for example, you can see that in our hobby master we have these hobbies. So what should now happen is, these checkboxes, reading and painting, should not come in a hard-coded way. It should actually be read from this database, and it should be displayed here dynamically, right? So in other words, now what we need to do is, the next logical step, what we need to do is, we need to somehow generate, these checkboxes, from this database here, that is hobby master. So let's go ahead and close this, and let's go back to our Visual Studio here, and let's go to our customer data entry.aspx. So the first thing what we'll do is, we'll go ahead and we'll remove those checkboxes, those hard-coded checkboxes, and we'll try to compile this project. Okay, so let's first go ahead and remove those hard-coded checkboxes. Slow. So let me go here. So let's go ahead and delete this reading and painting. So in this place, we would like to go and take the data from this table, from the hobby master table, and we would like to generate checkboxes here dynamically, right? So the first thing is, I've gone ahead and I've deleted those checkboxes. Now let me go and build the application. I'm very much sure that I'm going to get a lot of errors, because those checkboxes were referenced in a lot of places. So you can see that it is saying that, I'm not finding the reading and painting checkbox. So let's go ahead and remove this code, because we don't need this code anymore. Those checkboxes will now be generated, from the database. Okay, so let's go ahead and start removing these guys from all places. Right, solution. Right, so let's remove this from here as well. Probably we don't need the str hobbies here as well because they are no more present now. So painting, yes, don't need the painting. Right, something more there. Right, so what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've removed uh, you know the check boxes, the hard-coded check boxes, that is hobbies, and that is the hobbies check boxes, that is painting and whatever it was reading. Okay, so and I can see that the solution is also compiling well. So let me just go ahead and run this solution here. Remember that this thing what we are trying to do is a big thing. Okay, so we have to go step by step slowly, and I do understand that you guys are freshers who are watching this video, so I just want to be very slow and short and sweet, so that you don't fall apart anywhere. Okay, so I'll just go and again put shiv and pass at the rate 123, and what should happen is I should see the screen, but in the screen currently those checkboxes are eliminated, so we are able to run the application, but we need to ensure that these checkboxes are also present, right? So good, we have also completed the second logical step. Okay, so now that we have this empty area over here, okay, and in this empty area we want to go and create checkboxes using this data. For that, what we would need is we would need a panel here. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll create a very simple thing here called as a panel. So now what exactly is a panel? A panel, you can think about, is a container. A container, where we can go and add checkboxes, we can add buttons, we can add combo boxes, you can add any kind of user control over here. So what we would like to now do is, in our application now you can see that we have added a panel here. So the next logical step what we would like to do is, very quickly, let me explain you. In this panel, in this container, so in this area over here, right? So just let me explain you visually because it's sometimes very difficult to visualize. So this is where our container is, our panel is, right? So what we'd like to now do is we'd like to go and read the values from this database and add checkboxes dynamically inside this container over here, right? So that's a very complicated part. So that's our next step what we would like to do, right? So let's close the application here. So the first thing what we would like to do in order to achieve this is we would like to read the data from the hobby master first, right? So in other words, we would like to go and make logical changes into our class files, into our data access layer. So let's first start from data access layer. So the first step is we have to read this hobby master, right? So let's again go back to our data access layer, and over here the first step what we would like to do is quickly we would like to go and return a data set which has the hobbies. Okay, so this is actually a data set here, and our table is hobby master. So what we'll do is let's go ahead and I'll copy this complete thing over here, Control V. Let's change this to data set, that is capital S, right? And let's go ahead and also create one more class here. So let's go ahead and create in the middle tier one more class here, which is for hobbies. So from this hobbies class, we will actually make a call to the SQL Server class, to get the data set. Okay, so public class hobbies, and from this class let's go ahead and return a data set. So for that, again, we need to go and ensure that we import the system.data namespace, we import the system.sql client namespace, we also import the data access layer. So we will return a data set from here, and we'll go and create a function here saying get hobbies, and this get hobbies function of the hobbies class will actually make a call to the CLS SQL Server class, where we have just created one function here called as get hobbies, right? So this is our middle tire, and from this middle tire we'll make a call to the data access layer. So I'm going to go and create the CLS SQL Server class here, and from here I'll just say objsql dot get hobbies, and let me just go and build this, right? So that looks good. And now this function we need to go and call in our UI here, right? So in our UI what we need to do is actually we need to go and call this function and load our checkboxes inside the panel. So what I'll do now here is I'll go and create a very simple function here called as load hobby. So I'll say here private void load hobbies, and in this I'm going to go and invoke the hobbies class here. So hobbies, I'll go and create the object of the hobbies class, and I will go and loop through the hobbies data set and fill my panel. If you remember, we had created one panel where we would like to go and add all these checkboxes on runtime. And over here what we'll do is we'll go and take the complete hobby records by using this get hobbies function. And next thing is we'll loop through this data set here. So we'll say obj row in obj hobbies dot tables dot zero dot rows. So we'll go and loop through the rows here. In case you are not aware of ADO.NET, please go and see the series of ADO.NET. So you can see that we have gone ahead and we have invoked the get hobbies function, and in turn he will call the data access layer, and he will return all the records of the hobbies table, that means of the hobbies master, that means these records, right? And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and now for each one of these records, that is reading, swimming, writing, watching movies, we want to go and create a checkbox object and add it to the panel. So we'll go ahead and we'll create a checkbox object here, obj checkbox, the new checkbox, and this checkbox will go ahead and we'll add it to the panel. So panel one dot controls dot add, and add this checkbox. And for whatever checkbox we are adding here, we need to provide the description and ID. Okay, so we'll say yes. So obj checkbox dot text will be nothing but this value, the hobby description, right? So we'll say here yes, please go ahead and fetch the hobby description, and set it to the text, set it to this text here. Okay, so object, so let's convert this to a string, and also we need to go and set the ID. Now there are two things. One is the text. The text is nothing but which actually displays on the browser or on the screen. And second is internally we need to have this hobby ID with us so that we can go and insert values into database, right? So this one is more it's a visual thing, right? People who are seeing your screen, the end users, they will be reading this, but internally in your database you would be interested in these values, hobby ID. So that I will go and set it as a ID. So I'm going to say here obj row hobby ID. So the hobby ID is set to the ID of the checkbox, and the visual text is nothing but the hobby description, right? And this load hobbies I'll go and call in the page load. Let's say a load hobbies, right? So let me just go and build this first. So build solution. I hope that we don't have any defects. So no defects, that is good. So there our application is running. So let's see if it works. Login. There are some errors there, and this error is because we have done some blind copy paste here. So let's go ahead and fix that. If you remember right, in our get hobbies function here, we copy pasted the code, but we did not change the table name here, right? So this get hobby should actually call the table hobby master, right? So I'm going to go and change this to hobby master, right? Let me again go and build this. I hope now there shouldn't be any errors, right? Wrong password. And there it is. You can see now, these values are dynamically created, from the database, right? This is something called as container. You can see there is something called as container here. That is because, actually, if you remember right, in the previous section of the video, I had typed container over there. So we can just go and remove that. We don't need it. Slow. Just go and remove this. Save this. And if I refresh this, this container will go off. So I'm going to go and refresh this. Oops, what happened? Save it. Why is the container not going? Let me just relog in. So there the container word has gone, so it is good. Now you can see how these values are generated from the database. In other words, if I go and if I add tomorrow here one more record, let's say, so let's say I go and add here music. Okay. Now if I go and refresh my page over here, you can see the music is now seen. So in other words, now these checkboxes are dynamically generated on the fly and seen on the UI. So till now, what we have done is we have done all the database changes which can accommodate this one-to-many relationship between the customer and the hobbies. And second, we have done some changes on the UI side, and we can see now that at least the values of the hobbies are coming dynamically from the database, and it has been displayed on the screen, right? Now the other part is, or the main part now is, basically we need to go and ensure that this add, update and delete works properly, right? Now that's again a very big video, in other words, there are lots of steps over there. It's not so easy. So what we'll do is let's go ahead and close today's day. So we're going to go and close lab 28 for today. In other words, for this day, we have done the database changes as well as we have ensured that we can see those checkboxes dynamically on the screen. What we'll do in lab 29, we'll go and discuss about update, delete and add functionality, for this one-to-many relationship, right? So let's halt this lab here because I don't want to make this lab big, make it a 40 minutes labs or 50 minutes lab. So let's go ahead and halt this lab, and in the next lab, lab 29, we will see that how we can go and implement the update functionality using the one-to-many relationship. Okay, so currently I'm not going to go and do any kind of code for add, update, delete. We'll do the same in lab 29. Okay, so I hope that you enjoyed this video. In the next video we will try to implement add, update and delete functionality for one-to-many relationship. Thank you so much.